They called it a double tragedy. But was it actually a long-delayed consequence of a buried crime? That's the question haunting everyone in Brentwood, Los Angeles. That's the question the entire country is now asking. And that's the question Lucas Reiner has finally stepped forward to answer, after 15 years of calculated silence. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Let me take you back to a quiet Sunday morning that exploded into headlines. Rob Reiner, Hollywood legend, director of A Few Good Men, actor, producer, political activist, beloved by millions. Michelle Singer Reiner, his wife of over 3 decades, a warm presence, a philanthropist, a devoted mother. Both found stabbed to death in their $13.5 million Brentwood estate. Not by a stranger, not by a burglar, but with their own son Nick living just yards away in the guest house. And it was their daughter, Romy, just 27 years old, who made the horrifying discovery, who called 911, her voice trembling with something far deeper than shock. She told dispatchers that she feared a dangerous family member. She warned them, and this is key, that someone should be a suspect. She didn't hesitate. She didn't theorize. She knew. Police arrived. They found Rob and Michelle's bodies in the main bedroom, both having suffered what the coroner would later describe as multiple sharp force injuries. The cause of death, homicide. The time of death, late Saturday night, December 14th. And by that very evening, Nick Reiner was in handcuffs, booked, charged, 2 counts of first-degree murder. Now, let's just pause for a second and let that sink in. How does a family go from Oscar buzz and red carpets to murder scenes and police tape? How does a father, who directed one of the most famous courtroom dramas of all time, wind up the victim in a case more horrifying than any script he ever wrote? And what if the answers don't begin in 2026, but all the way back in 2009? Because that's what Lucas Reiner, Rob's younger brother, has just come forward to reveal. And his story changes everything. He's remained mostly in the background for years. The quiet Reiner, the painter, the soft-spoken creative type who stayed out of the limelight. But now, Lucas is telling the world that a dark secret was buried more than a decade ago. One that involved Nick. One that, if exposed, might have stopped this tragedy before it happened. According to Lucas, Rob Reiner didn't just overlook troubling behavior. He actively covered up a serious incident involving Nick in 2009, paid people off, destroyed evidence, pressured family members into silence. And in doing so, he didn't just protect his son, he enabled him. You heard that right. Lucas claims Rob Reiner made a decision back then, a decision that would cost him everything in the long run. Now let me ask you something. What would you do if someone you loved committed a terrible crime? Would you call the police? Would you try to reason with them? Or would you do everything in your power to erase the evidence and pretend it never happened? Because that's the crossroad Rob allegedly faced in 2009. And Lucas says his brother made the wrong choice. At the time, the media barely noticed what happened because they weren't allowed to. The incident was scrubbed clean before it ever saw the light of day. No charges, no court case, just rumors whispered among hotel staff, sealed settlements, and a long list of non-disclosure agreements. But Lucas never forgot it. He says it haunted him. That he watched Nick spiral deeper into addiction and rage while Rob clung desperately to an illusion of control. That every intervention fell flat because Rob refused to let anyone embarrass the family. And worst of all, Lucas claims Romy knew too. That she tried, again and again, to get someone to take her brother seriously as a threat. And now she's the one who found her parents' bodies. If that doesn't punch you in the gut, nothing will. We often see these cases through the lens of tabloid drama, celebrity, scandal, courtroom drama. But this isn't about fame. It's about a family. A daughter screaming into the void. A son spiraling into something unrecognizable. A father blinded by loyalty. A mother caught in the crossfire. And a brother, Lucas, who couldn't live with the silence anymore. So what really happened that night in 2009? Why did Rob cover it up? What evidence did he destroy? What did Romy write in the diary police reportedly found in her room? And how many people knew the truth, but said nothing? Because here's the thing. If Lucas is right, this wasn't just a tragedy. It was a preventable one. And that opens up a whole new level of horror, doesn't it? We expect monsters to look like monsters. But what if the real danger comes from those who seem safest, those who love us, protect us, shield us? What if Rob Reiner didn't fail as a father, but succeeded too well in shielding his son? And what if that protection killed him? The silence is breaking now. Slowly, reluctantly, painfully, Lucas is speaking. Old staff members are leaking details. Detectives are reevaluating the timeline. A woman from Arizona, connected to the 2009 incident, is finally stepping forward. And somewhere in the middle of all this, a missing piece of surveillance footage has reportedly been recovered. The LAPD isn't commenting yet. But behind the scenes, people are scared. This isn't just about Nick anymore. It's about who helped him, who protected him, who silenced the alarms. It's about complicity. And that's the most terrifying part. Because it means this wasn't just one man losing control. It was a system of loyalty, fear, and power that allowed it to happen. A system built inside a house that looked perfect from the outside. A house that now has 2 chalk outlines in the master bedroom. And a broken daughter left in the ashes. But if you think this story is over, it's not. It's just getting started. Because what Lucas found next, and the anonymous phone call that followed, opens the floodgates to a conspiracy that goes deeper than anyone ever imagined. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. What happens when the picture-perfect family starts to rot from the inside? But no one's willing to admit it. You've seen them before, haven't you? The Reiners, smiling on the red carpet, glowing with Hollywood shine. Rob in his tuxedo, Michelle in elegant gowns, Nick clapping along at premieres, Romy tucked under her father's arm, laughing like they didn't have a care in the world. And maybe back then, they didn't. Or maybe the cracks were already there, thin, hairline fractures running beneath the surface, waiting for the right pressure to split everything open. Let's rewind the tape. The year was 2006. Rob Reiner had just wrapped up a string of critically praised projects. He was a household name, a respected director, and a vocal activist with political reach. Michelle was running charitable foundations and was regularly praised in glossy magazines as the elegant soul behind the Hollywood powerhouse. Their children, Romy and Nick, were growing up in privilege. Private tutors, A-list events, exclusive schools, the best money could buy. It was the kind of family that gave interviews in Architectural Digest and got standing ovations at fundraisers. But here's the thing about perfection. It's often used to cover a mess. And behind closed doors, things were already unraveling. Let's talk about Nick. Nick Reiner, their only son, gifted, troubled, unpredictable. From a young age, there were signs, outbursts in school, fights with peers, erratic mood swings. He bounced from therapist to therapist. Some said he was just passionate. Others used stronger terms, volatile, defiant, dangerous. But in the Reiner household, image was everything. Rob, ever the protector, refused to let anything stick to the family name. He insisted Nick would grow out of it, that the world just didn't understand his son's brilliance. And at first, people bought it. After all, how could the beloved director of The Princess Bride have anything but a fairy tale life? But Lucas, the quiet brother, saw something else. He remembers the whispers. He remembers a party in 2007 when Nick, just 14, flipped over a table after a guest asked him an innocent question about school. He remembers Michelle making excuses. He's under pressure, she said. Teenage boys go through phases. He remembers Rob laughing it off, handing Nick another drink like it was nothing. And most of all, Lucas remembers the looks, the glances between staff, the guests who left early, the lingering sense that something wasn't right. Because the truth is, Rob didn't just ignore the warning signs, he erased them. Whenever Nick got in trouble, Rob made it go away. A broken nose here, a trashed hotel room there. Boys will be boys, he'd say. He's just misunderstood. Money changed hands. Apologies were issued. And slowly, quietly, Nick became untouchable. Think about that. What happens when a teenager learns that consequences don't apply? What happens when a boy starts to believe his father's power will always save him? That's the foundation this house was built on. And yet, to the outside world, the Reiners were still golden. At galas, Rob would speak passionately about justice, about accountability, about the importance of truth. While back home, Lucas claims his son was tearing holes in the very values he pretended to uphold. Let's pause here for a second. Because this is the contradiction that makes the whole thing feel like a slow-motion nightmare. Rob Reiner, a man who spent his life defending justice, allegedly using his influence to cover up violence. Michelle, the public advocate for women's safety, turning a blind eye to her own daughter's private fears. And Lucas? He tried to speak up. In late 2008, during a rare family vacation in Santa Barbara, Lucas pulled Rob aside. He told him he was concerned, that Nick was becoming someone he didn't recognize, that Romy was scared, that things were escalating. And do you know what Rob said? "I've got it under control. You worry too much." Control. That word would come up again, and again, and again. Control over the narrative. Control over the family. Control over the truth. But the more Rob tried to contain the chaos, the more it spilled out, infecting everything. Lucas started noticing more. Nick had begun isolating himself, spending long hours locked in his guest house studio, blasting music, screaming at the house staff, breaking things, threatening people. And then came the girls. Not girlfriends, not relationships, but girls who came and went, quickly, quietly. Some of them barely legal, some of them not legal at all. And every time someone raised a concern, it vanished. Lucas' suspects' hush money was involved even then. Untraceable Venmo payments, lavish gifts, signed waivers. It wasn't just about protecting Nick anymore. It was about protecting the Reiner brand. And yet, amidst all this, Romy kept smiling. The good daughter. The obedient daughter. But behind the smile, she was watching everything. She saw the way Nick would corner the maids, the way he'd curse at their mother, the way Rob would look the other way. She began keeping notes, journaling, confiding in her art teacher, telling friends at school that her brother was going dark. But no one took her seriously, because what child of Hollywood royalty doesn't have some emotional baggage? Lucas did. He tried to confront Rob again, this time over dinner. He told him, point blank, "You're enabling something that could end very badly." Rob didn't raise his voice, didn't threaten. He just looked him in the eye and said, "This family stays loyal. Always." That's when Lucas knew. This wasn't a father in denial. This was a man who'd made a choice to protect his son at all costs, even if it meant endangering everyone else. And then, 2009 happened. The incident. The one no one was supposed to talk about. The one that Lucas says changed everything and set the stage for murder over a decade later. It involved a hotel room, a woman, blood, and a decision that would haunt this family forever. But we're not quite there yet. Because before the cover-up came the crime, and it was darker than anyone could have imagined. What happens when your darkest family secret doesn't just resurface, but knocks on your door with blood on its hands? December 2009. It was supposed to be just another winter weekend in Los Angeles. Mild weather, red carpet events, families shopping in Beverly Hills, celebrities ducking from the paparazzi. But for Lucas Reiner, that weekend was a scar etched in memory. It didn't start with a phone call. It started with silence. At 2:38 a.m. on a Saturday night, Lucas's phone buzzed once. A single text from Romy. "Something bad happened. Don't trust Dad." Or Nick. That was it. No explanation. No follow-up. Just that. Now, you have to understand, Romy wasn't someone who exaggerated. Even as a teenager, she had this old soul energy. Thoughtful, observant, careful with her words. So when Lucas read that message, his heart dropped. He tried to call her. No answer. Tried again. Voicemail. Tried texting. Nothing. That silence told him more than any voicemail ever could. And then came the whispers. The next morning, Lucas's assistant forwarded him an odd email from a freelance paparazzo. No photo. Just a short message. "You didn't hear this from me, but you might want to ask Rob why there were 2 ambulances outside the Avalon on Sunset last night." The Avalon, a hotel known for late-night Hollywood parties. Trendy, seedy, private. And that was the moment Lucas felt his stomach flip. Because the Avalon wasn't just any hotel. It was where Rob often stashed Nick when he needed space. A familiar spot. A protected one. A place where management had long been conditioned to look the other way if one of Hollywood's elite needed privacy. Lucas got in his car. No bodyguards. No phone calls. Just instinct. He arrived by noon. Parked on a side street. Walked in through the back entrance. The front desk clerk, a young woman in her 20s, recognized him immediately. She stiffened, clearly trained to smile and comply when a Reiner walked in. But when Lucas asked to see Nick, she hesitated. That was the tell. Then she said something strange. He's no longer checked in. Management took care of it. The room's already been cleaned. Already cleaned? Before noon? Lucas's eyes narrowed. Did police come last night? She wouldn't meet his gaze. I'm not allowed to comment on that. Which, of course, meant yes. Something had happened. Something big. Something they were now scrubbing, literally and figuratively. Lucas pushed past the lobby and found his way to the elevators. Room 614. That was the room Nick had always preferred. High floor. Corner suite. Privacy guaranteed. The door was open. Inside, the cleaning staff moved like shadows. Fast, silent, focused. And in the middle of the room, a rug. A new one. Fresh. Wrong color. Lucas walked in. Looked closer. The carpet underneath was still damp. Bleach-scented. Scrubbed beyond recognition. The bathroom mirror was shattered. The headboard cracked. There was a faint reddish stain trailing along the tile grout near the closet. Lucas turned to one of the staff. Who stayed here last night? The man froze, then looked over his shoulder. Sir, you should leave. I don't want to lose my job. And that's when it hit Lucas. This wasn't just a crime scene. It was a cover-up. He left the room and called Romy again. Still nothing. Then, as he stepped outside, he saw it. 2 black SUVs idling at the rear entrance. Inside one of them, Rob Reiner. Phone pressed to his ear. Eyes cold. Lips tight. No smile. No wave. Just a look. A look that said, turn around. Now. But Lucas didn't turn. He walked up to the SUV. Rob rolled down the window 2 inches. Get in, Rob said. Lucas did. And for the next 5 minutes, everything changed. Rob spoke first. I know what you're thinking, but it's not what you think. Lucas said nothing. There was an incident, but it's being handled. No one's seriously hurt. No charges. Everyone's going to be fine. Lucas asked the only question that mattered. Was someone assaulted? Rob hesitated, then said, there was a misunderstanding. She got aggressive first. Nick just defended himself. That's what happened. That's what happened. Lucas didn't believe a word of it. But Rob wasn't finished. He turned and looked his younger brother in the eyes. This cannot go public. Do you understand me? Not a word to the press. Not to friends. Not to anyone. Lucas stared at him. What if it happens again? Rob didn't blink. It won't. And then, in a voice colder than Lucas had ever heard, if you say anything, I'll cut you off. Publicly. Privately. Financially. This family survives on trust. You break that, you're out. That was the line in the sand. Family loyalty or exile. Lucas stepped out of the car. He didn't say a word. But inside, something snapped. Days passed. There was no arrest. No news report. No hospital record. The woman, whoever she was, had vanished. Later, Lucas learned that she had been a dancer from San Diego, booked through a modeling agency for a private night with Nick. She arrived alone, left in an ambulance, never filed a report. No last name. No follow-up. She simply disappeared. Some say she was paid. Others say she was threatened. One hotel staff member claimed to overhear something about immigration issues being used as leverage. But the message was clear. This never happened. And for years, it didn't. Until now. Because Lucas never forgot that night. Never forgot the bleach. The new rug. The shattered mirror. The silence from Romy. The warning in Rob's eyes. And now, Rob and Michelle were dead. Nick was in jail. And the woman who vanished in 2009, she had just been found, living in Arizona, under a new name, willing, finally, to talk. But what she said, that was the twist no one saw coming. And it would shatter what little remained of the Reiner legacy. What if the real reason people stay silent isn't fear of being hurt, but fear of being erased? That was the weight Lucas carried every single day after the 2009 incident. You'd think a man with a conscience, a moral compass, and a front row seat to one of the ugliest cover-ups in recent Hollywood history would sound the alarm. But you'd be wrong. Because what Rob Reiner did next was subtle, sophisticated, strategic. He didn't yell. He didn't threaten with fists or fury. He used something far more terrifying, power. Lucas, that artsy brother, the family outsider, wasn't stupid. He knew the kind of empire Rob had built over the years. This wasn't just a man with movie clout. It was a man with political alliances, legal protection, media influence, and a Rolodex most senators would kill for. Rob didn't just own a reputation. He controlled the narrative. And Lucas? He had no proof, no tape, no photos. Just a terrible memory and a sick feeling in his gut that if he pushed too hard, he'd vanish next. Let's rewind to the weeks after the Avalon incident. The public heard nothing, but inside the family, the tension was radioactive. Romy had stopped speaking at the dinner table. Michelle's hands shook when she poured tea. Nick walked around the Brentwood estate like nothing had happened, earbuds in, sunglasses on, humming to himself like a child who'd just gotten away with stealing cookies. And knew no one would punish him. Lucas couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that red smear on the bathroom tile, that bleach-scrubbed carpet, that hotel clerk's trembling hands. And worst of all, that look in Rob's eyes. That cold, measured calm that said, "You can't stop this. You're not strong enough." But Lucas tried. He reached out to an old journalist friend, gave her the outline, told her, off the record, what happened. 3 days later, she ghosted him. Didn't return calls. Didn't answer texts. Years later, Lucas learned she'd suddenly landed a high-profile book deal with a publisher connected to one of Rob's closest producing partners. Coincidence? Or reward? He tried talking to Romy, met her at a coffee shop near UCLA, told her, "I know what happened that night. I believe you." She smiled, said she was fine, then leaned in and whispered, "If you keep digging, you won't be invited to the funeral." Chills. That's when Lucas realized something horrible. Romy wanted help, but she didn't trust anyone. Not her parents. Not the press. Not even him. Because in a family that famous, that powerful, telling the truth doesn't make you brave. It makes you vulnerable. And that's exactly what Rob exploited. Over the next few months, Lucas's life began to change. Not dramatically, but deliberately. He lost 2 gallery contracts. A major exhibit he'd been planning was suddenly postponed indefinitely. His name stopped appearing on invitation lists. Art circles where he once thrived began to go quiet. Friends stopped calling. Some of them wouldn't even look him in the eye. And then came the kicker. A letter from a legal team, citing slanderous insinuations, defamatory conversations, and a pattern of behavior harmful to the Reiner brand. It didn't name him directly, but the message was clear. Keep your mouth shut, or we bury you professionally. Lucas stared at the paper for an hour. Then he burned it in his fireplace. Not because he was brave, but because he was terrified. What would you do? What would anyone do? When the people who are supposed to protect you turn into your silencers, how do you scream? He tried writing everything down, journaling, creating art that hinted at the truth. But it never felt like enough. And meanwhile, Nick was growing darker, more erratic, more dangerous. Romy confided in a close friend that Nick had threatened her dog. Another time, she came to school with a bruised wrist and claimed she fell on the stairs. But no one reported anything, because they were the Reiners. And Nick always smiled just enough to confuse people. Years passed. The world moved on. Rob's career flourished. He did speaking tours, political endorsements, got awards. Nick got into rehab more than once. And each time, Rob would appear on some late-night talk show saying how proud he was of his son's bravery and journey to recovery. Lucas? He disappeared from public view, stopped giving interviews, stopped attending premieres, moved to a small artist community in Northern California where he could paint in peace. But peace never came, because guilt doesn't fade with distance, and fear doesn't vanish when you run. The silence ate at him. He kept asking himself the same question every single night. What if someone dies because I stayed quiet? And then, one December evening, someone did. 2 people, actually. Rob and Michelle. Brutally, violently, unforgivably. And just like that, everything Lucas feared came true. But it wasn't over. Because the night after the murders, the night after Nick was arrested, Lucas got a call. A blocked number. He answered. A woman's voice. Calm, shaky, determined. "I know what happened in 2009. I was there." Lucas froze. He whispered, "Who is this?" Silence. Then, "I was the girl in that room." 12 words that changed everything. She didn't give her name. Didn't say where she was. Just told him that she'd been watching the news. That when she saw Rob's face on the screen, that photo of him smiling at the Golden Globes, she felt sick. "He ruined my life," she said. "And no one ever believed me. But I never forgot his brother. You were there. You looked scared." Lucas closed his eyes. He had been scared. But now, He was something else entirely. Because if this woman was real, if she was still alive, and if she was ready to talk, then maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late to finally expose everything. He told her, "Please, let me help you. Tell me where you are." She paused, then said, "Not yet, but soon. And when I do, you'll need to protect me, because they'll try to stop this." And then she hung up. Lucas sat in the dark, phone still pressed to his ear. He didn't move for 5 minutes. He just listened to the silence. And for the first time in 15 years, he felt it. Not fear, not shame, resolve. Because if this woman was ready to come forward, then it was time. Time to burn the Reiner myth to the ground. But what Lucas didn't know, someone else had been listening, and they were ready to strike first. What if the most damning truth wasn't buried in a vault, but written in ink by a terrified daughter? The day after that call, Lucas barely slept. His hands trembled. His mind raced. If the girl from 2009 really was alive and willing to talk, it would mean everything he'd been forced to bury could finally be exhumed. But he wasn't the only one following the trail now. Because across the city, someone else was already 10 steps ahead. Someone who just handed the LAPD something far more explosive than hearsay, rumors, or whispered phone calls. A diary. Not just any diary. Romy's. That's right. The daughter. The one who found the bodies. The one who always smiled politely at the cameras. The one who stood by her father at award ceremonies. The one who had always been caught between the brilliance of Rob and the chaos of Nick. She had been documenting everything. For years. Lucas got the call from Detective and Forrester around 8:12 a.m. the following morning. Forrester wasn't new to high-profile homicides. She'd worked on celebrity stalker cases, the 2017 Brentwood double shooting, even a politically sensitive overdose involving a senator's son. But this case? This case was different. "This isn't just a murder scene," she told Lucas bluntly. "It's a map of everything your family's tried to hide." She asked him to come to the station. Quietly. No press. No lawyers. Lucas agreed. Inside the precinct, Forrester slid a slim, purple-covered moleskine across the table. The first thing he noticed? It was frayed. Worn. Like it had been handled 1,000 times. The second? Romy's name. Scribbled on the inside cover. "If you're reading this, I either trusted you, or I'm already gone." Lucas swallowed hard. He turned the page. And what he found wasn't just a daughter's journal. It was a chronicle of fear. Page after page. Entry after entry. Romy had written everything down. Starting in 2008, when Nick first started yelling at the staff. Then 2009, the incident. The night she overheard her father whispering into a burner phone. Get rid of it. All of it. No prints. No tapes, no press. She wrote about watching a girl limp out of the guest house at 4 a.m. She wrote about hearing her mother cry behind a locked bathroom door the next morning. She even described Lucas's face when he came to the house the day after the hotel incident. Uncle Luke looked like someone had dragged a ghost through her front door. I could tell he wanted to scream, but he just stood there, pale, silent. He said hi, then left. I knew something was horribly wrong. But the entries didn't stop there. Romy kept writing. Every year, every holiday, every violent outburst Nick had, every time her mother begged her to keep quiet. She recorded it all. Nick throwing a glass at her during Thanksgiving in 2013. Nick locking himself in the guest house with 3 girls during spring break 2015, one of whom allegedly left in tears, barefoot, clutching her phone like a lifeline. A family therapist trying to intervene in 2017, only to be fired days later after a private session with Rob. But the darkest entries? They came in 2021. That year, Romy had started therapy on her own, privately, secretly, paid in cash. She described feeling like a prisoner in a golden zoo, where the animals wear tuxedos and no one calls the zookeeper. She feared Nick would snap, said he'd threatened to make them all shut up one day. Most chillingly, she wrote, "Dad says I'm paranoid, but I keep a knife under my pillow now. I don't sleep unless I know he's locked in his room. I'm scared of my own brother." Lucas read that sentence 5 times. And then again, his heart thudded in his ears. This wasn't just trauma. This was a ticking time bomb, and they'd all ignored the fuse. And then, one final entry, just 10 days before Rob and Michelle were murdered. "He's worse now. The meds don't help. He screams at Mom. He says Dad's next. I don't think they're safe anymore. I keep telling them, but they won't listen. I told Uncle Luke once, he believed me. But no one else did. If anything happens, I swear I tried. A long pause followed that page. The next page was blank. Detective Forrester leaned in. We found the diary under her bed, inside a shoebox wrapped in 2 scarves, hidden beneath old yearbooks, like she knew someone might come looking for it. Lucas couldn't speak. His hands were shaking. All these years, he'd blamed himself for not doing more. But Romy had done it all. She'd screamed into the silence. And still, no one listened. Not Rob, not Michelle, not the police. They all bought into the myth. That family came first. That Nick just needed help. That nothing that ugly could happen inside a home worth $13.5 million. But it did. And now they were dead. Lucas asked Forrester the obvious question. Why haven't you released this to the media? She scoffed. Because we don't want a circus. And because not everyone in this city wants the Reiner name dragged through the dirt. She was being polite. What she really meant was, power still protects power. Even now. Even with a double murder. Even with a handwritten confession from the daughter of the victims. Because legacies don't die easily in Hollywood. They linger. They haunt. They get rewritten by agents and lawyers and smiling press statements. But Lucas wasn't playing that game anymore. He asked for a copy of the diary. Forrester said no. He asked again. She hesitated, then slid him a printed PDF, off the record, and told him, if you leak this, we'll deny everything. But maybe someone should leak it. Lucas left the station that day with shaking hands and a churning stomach. But deep down, he felt something rising. Rage, regret, and a purpose. Because buried in that diary were names, dates, details, things no press release could sanitize. And Lucas knew exactly what to do next. He just didn't know. Someone was already watching him, following him, and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. What if the one person who could destroy the whole lie had already been buried in everyone's memory, on purpose? She hadn't been seen in over 15 years. No name on police records. No charges filed. No medical report. Not a single photo. Nothing. To most, she didn't exist. But Lucas knew she did. He remembered her eyes. Wide. Bloodshot. Scared. And he remembered the way Rob had snapped at anyone who so much as whispered about the girl from the hotel. For years, Lucas thought she was gone. Not missing, erased. Until now. It started with a burner phone. A black, beat-up flip model that Lucas hadn't seen since the mid-2000s. It arrived in a plain brown envelope. No return address. Just one note tucked inside. She's ready, but you're not safe. Lucas stared at the phone like it was a live grenade. He flipped it open. Nothing in the call log. No saved numbers. No SIM card. Then, the screen lit up. An incoming call. Blocked number. He hesitated, then answered. A woman's voice. Calm. Low. Measured. Lucas. He froze. It's me. I'm the one from the Avalon. 2009. And just like that, the ghost had a voice. She didn't give her real name. Said it was safer that way. But she called herself Sierra, a name that may or may not have been real. She confirmed everything Lucas remembered. The room. The screaming. The blood. The silence after. But then she said something that knocked the breath out of him. It wasn't the first time. What? There were others, she continued. Not all like me. Some worse. Lucas's head pounded. Why didn't you say anything? She didn't laugh. She didn't yell. She just sighed. Because your brother made sure no one would believe me. Sierra was 19 when she met Nick. Not through friends. Not at a party. But through an agency. You know the kind. One of those so-called modeling services that cater to elite parties. With NDAs built into the handshake and cash slipped into purses before names are ever exchanged. She was new to LA, trying to act. Had one foot in reality shows, another in club appearances. And Nick? He was a VIP client. The kind the agency warned girls not to cross. He had a temper, she told Lucas. But the agency said he was protected. That if anything happened, I should walk away and say nothing. So she did. Until that night. The Avalon. Room 614. She was sent there around 10:30 p.m. Nick had already been drinking. Alone. Angry. Ranting about how his father didn't respect him. How his sister was a snitch. How the world was out to get him. Then he turned on her. Screamed. Grabbed. Slammed her against the wall. She fought back. Hit him. Scratched him. That's when he lost it. According to Sierra, he threw her onto the glass coffee table, dragged her by the hair, locked her in the bathroom. She bled, screamed, cried, but no one came. Because the suite was booked under a shell name, and the staff had been prepped. It wasn't until nearly 3 a.m. that someone knocked on the door. A hotel cleaner. Nick opened it, shirtless, bruised, calm. "Handle this," he told the cleaner, pointing to the bloodied bathroom. And then, he walked out, like it was just another Saturday. Sierra was found in a towel, bruised, barefoot, in shock. The hotel manager arrived first, then a doctor, then, within the hour, Rob Reiner. Accompanied by 2 men in suits. Sierra said she was offered cash, a lot of it, more than she'd ever seen, but only if she signed, not just an NDA, but a waiver that said she had no injuries and had been treated with respect. She refused. That's when things got uglier. "They told me I'd be deported," she said, "that I was here on the wrong visa. That one call could end my future." Lucas clenched his fists. "Were you here illegally?" "No, but that didn't matter. They said she'd resist arrest, that she had a history of drug use, that she'd be smeared before anyone ever took her seriously. And Rob, he never apologized. He never asked if she was okay. He just stared at her with the cold eyes of a man cleaning up a mess, not comforting a victim. "I'll take care of this," he'd said to his assistant. "Make sure she's gone." And she was. Sierra fled LA within 48 hours. She changed her name, got a job in Arizona, cut ties with everyone she knew. She stayed silent for years. Until now. "I saw the news," she told Lucas. "About Romy, about the murders, about Nick. And I thought, maybe they'd finally believe me." Lucas felt his throat tighten. "Why now?" She paused. "Because your niece died trying to protect them, and no one protected her." That broke him. And then, the twist. Sierra had proof. Photos of bruises. A fragment of the NDA. A voicemail from Nick, slurring threats. She kept them all. In a safe. Just in case. Lucas begged her to meet in person. She said maybe. Soon. But only when she was sure no one was watching. And then, her voice cracked. "They ruined my life, Lucas. I was a kid. They made me feel like trash. Like I was disposable. I still can't sleep without the lights on." Lucas whispered, "I believe you." She replied, "I know. You were the only one who looked scared that night." And then she hung up. Lucas sat alone in his apartment. Phone still warm in his hand. Mind racing. This wasn't just one girl's story. It was the key. The missing link between 2009 and the murders. Because if Rob had paid to cover this up once, how many more times had he done it? And if Sierra had a voicemail, a recorded threat from Nick, then Nick's defense, that he suffered from a psychotic break, that he wasn't fully responsible, was about to fall apart. Lucas knew what he had to do. Go public. Expose everything. But he also knew, if Sierra was real, if the diary was real, if everything was about to break wide open, then someone powerful was about to get desperate. And desperate people do dangerous things. What if the one thing they thought was gone forever, the one piece of evidence they destroyed, came back from the dead? Lucas was pacing his studio, the ghost of Sierra's voice still echoing in his ears, when his email pinged. Subject line: "You need to see this before it disappears again." No signature, no text in the body, just a single attachment. File name: RM614_Hallwaycom_FRAG.MOV. He stared at it. Room 614. The Avalon Hotel. The same night. The very scene Rob had sworn was wiped clean. Lucas clicked the file. A grainy black and white video opened. Timestamp: December 13th, 2009, 3:11 a.m. At first, just silence. The dim, eerie hum of a hallway monitor. Then, a figure stumbles into frame. Nick, drunk, shirtless, limping, his knuckles raw. He drags something. Not a body, but a blanket. Heavy, bundled. There's a trail behind him. Dark, wet, blood. He stops, drops the blanket, looks around, then kicks it. Hard. Lucas recoiled from the screen. Another figure enters the frame moments later. 2 men in dark suits. One pulls out a phone. The other pulls Nick aside. Then comes the last face. Rob Reiner, walking calmly toward the suite. He gestures to the blanket. The 2 men nod. One disappears back toward the stairwell, dragging the bundle. The other escorts Nick away. And Rob? He walks into room 614 like a man inspecting a film set. Like he's done this before. Lucas felt cold. He played the video again and again until he could recite every frame. This wasn't just disturbing. It was damning. He forwarded the clip to Detective Forrester with a single line. Still think this doesn't go deeper? 2 hours later, she was at his door. No badge. No partner. Just her. She looked shaken. Where did this come from? Lucas shrugged. Anonymous leak. No IP attached. Forrester ran a hand through her hair. We thought all hotel footage was erased. This changes everything. She was right. This wasn't just hotel gossip anymore. It was physical evidence. Proof that Nick hurt someone. Proof that Rob covered it up. Proof that someone at the Avalon, or someone close to the Reiner cleanup crew, had saved a copy and was just now deciding to use it. But why now? And more importantly, who sent it? Forrester wasn't optimistic. It won't hold up in court unless we find the original source. This could have been altered. Lucas disagreed. He knew the rhythm of that hallway. The angle. The voices. The camera blind spots. This wasn't fake. This was the last surviving witness to a night that had been buried in bleach and lies. And then, Lucas noticed something. A detail everyone else might have missed. At the edge of the frame, just before the feed cuts, there's a flash. A reflection in the stairwell glass. A figure holding something. A second camera. That changed everything. Because if someone was secretly filming the cover-up itself, they hadn't just caught a crime. They had leverage. Blackmail material. The kind of footage people kill for. Lucas leaned back. His pulse thundered. If that second video still existed, it could bring the whole Reiner empire crashing down. No NDAs. No denials. Just unfiltered, uncontestable truth. But where was it? Who had it? And why now? After all these years, were they choosing to surface? Lucas didn't sleep. Instead, he traced every connection he could think of. Old Avalon staff members. Former bodyguards. Anonymous hacker forums. And then it hit him. He remembered a guy named Kellen. Security tech. Worked for the Reiners during the 2000s. Quiet. Paranoid. Always carried 2 phones. Lucas hadn't seen him since a party in 2011, where Kellen was spotted screaming at Rob outside by the pool. No one knew why. He was fired days later. No reason given. Lucas tracked him down through an encrypted message board tied to a security whistleblower's site. One-word reply. Meet. The next night, they met at a 24-hour diner in Echo Park. Kellen was thinner. Nervous. Chain-smoking. Lucas slid into the booth. No small talk. Did you send the footage? Kellen nodded. I've been holding it. For insurance. But now, everything's crumbling. Lucas leaned in. Do you have the second angle? Kellen looked around. Whispered. Yes. It's worse than you think. Worse? It shows Rob giving the order. Direct. Clear. No ambiguity. It wasn't just a cover-up. It was an orchestration. Lucas's chest tightened. This was it. The smoking gun. But Kellen looked terrified. If I release it, I'm dead. You don't know who else is involved. Lucas pressed. Kellen shook his head. Not yet. I'm watching the headlines. Waiting to see if Nick flips. If he names names. Then, softer. But you can blow the first hole. That hallway clip? Leak it. Shake the tree. He stood up. Dropped a USB drive on the table. Just don't tell anyone we talked. Then he vanished into the night. Back at his apartment, Lucas plugged in the drive. The same footage. Slightly longer. Clearer. And one extra clip, a sound file. He clicked play. A hushed voice. Male. Angry. If she talks, it's over. I don't care how. Make it go away. It was Rob. Lucas slammed the laptop shut. His heart was racing. This was bigger than anything Romy wrote in her diary. Bigger than Sierra's testimony. Bigger than Nick's arrest. Because this wasn't just a father shielding his son. It was a man commanding silence. Orchestrating obedience. Wielding power like a scalpel. Lucas knew what he had to do. He called a journalist. Not just any journalist. The one who'd ghosted him back in 2009. She picked up after one ring. He didn't even wait. You owe me. And I have something that will blow this entire case open. She replied. Are you talking about the hallway footage? Because you're too late. Lucas blinked. What? It's already online. Someone leaked it 20 minutes ago. It's going viral. He turned to his screen. She was right. Hashtag Nick Reiner cover-up. Hashtag Rob Reiner footage. Hashtag Avalon video. Thousands of tweets. Reddit exploding, news headlines spinning like roulette, and then his phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. You shouldn't have done that. Watch your back. Lucas stared at the screen because he had just broken the silence. But the silence was about to hit back. What happens when you finally speak the truth and the people who built the lie come to collect? The footage was out. No more secrets. No more silent screams behind million-dollar drapes. No more hiding. The internet was doing what it did best, dissecting, magnifying, and exposing. Within minutes, the video of Nick dragging that bloody blanket down the Avalon hallway had flooded Twitter, TikTok, Reddit, and Discord. Hashtags exploded across platforms. Hashtag Nick Reiner murder. Hashtag Rob Reiner lied. Hashtag Romy knew. Hashtag Reiner cover up. Lucas watched it all from his laptop like a man strapped to a rocket he couldn't control. The video had been downloaded, re-uploaded, edited, subtitled, and slowed down frame by frame. Nick's face. Rob's entrance. The men in suits. The bundle. No one could deny it now. And still, no one in power said a word. The LAPD remained tight-lipped. Rob's estate issued a vague press release about deeply fabricated content and a desire to respect the family's grief. Nick's attorney called the footage staged. And the major networks? They hesitated. Too big. Too messy. Too many phone calls behind the scenes. But the internet didn't care about PR statements. Truth had gone viral. And that made Lucas dangerous. Too visible to ignore. Too loud to shut down quietly. Which is why, when he returned to his apartment late that night, the door was already unlocked. He froze. His keys were still in his hand. The deadbolt was turned. But the door was open. Just a crack. He nudged it wider. Every instinct screamed at him to run. But he stepped inside. The lights were off. His studio was trashed. Drawers yanked open. Canvases slashed. His safe, pried apart with a crowbar and left hanging open like a gutted chest cavity. And worst of all, Romy's diary was gone. Lucas stumbled backward, heart pounding. This wasn't just a break-in. This was a message. Someone had searched his home, not for valuables, but for evidence. They hadn't taken his laptop, or his tablet, or his TV, just the things that couldn't be duplicated. The diary, the USB, his handwritten notes, everything personal, everything incriminating. He sat down, shaking. For the first time in weeks, he realized something terrifying. He had no idea who was behind this. Because sure, Rob was dead. But Rob had people. Fixers. Lawyers. Allies. Executives with everything to lose if the Reiner name collapsed under scandal. Hollywood protects its own, even from the grave. Then came the second blow. His phone buzzed. Unknown caller. He answered instinctively. A voicemail. Filtered. Cold. Stop. Or you're next. Then, silence. He stared at the screen. This wasn't paranoia anymore. This was real. And it wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Lucas called Detective Forrester. Told her about the break-in. Told her the diary was gone. She listened, quietly. Then said, "We didn't take it." "You're sure?" he asked. "We had a copy made." But someone knew where to find the original. Someone with access to your building, your habits, your patterns. Lucas felt sick. "They also called me," he said. "And they won't stop," she replied. "Not until they silence you. Or discredit you. So what do? You stay public. Visible. The more people watching, the harder it is for them to make you disappear." But the next morning, the headlines changed. Fast. Brutal. Coordinated. Lucas Reiner's history of instability surfaces. Former partner calls him obsessive, dangerous. Reiner's brother had psychotic break years ago, say friends. None of it was true. Some of it was twisted versions of old, irrelevant facts. An ex-girlfriend. A therapist visit. A canceled show. Suddenly, Lucas was no longer a whistleblower. He was a fragile, attention-seeking artist with unresolved trauma. Classic playbook. Attack the source. Make them question the messenger. Erase the message. Lucas received over 300 messages in 24 hours. Some kind, some cruel, some threatening. But one message stood out. From Sierra. "They're looking for me. I had to leave town. I have the second video. I'm sending it." Attached was a 6-second clip. Grainy. Shot through a second hallway mirror. It showed Rob grabbing the blanket, barking orders, and Nick sitting in the corner of the hallway, laughing as the blood seeped from the cloth. Lucas vomited into the sink. This wasn't just a scandal. It was a horror show. Later that night, Lucas's phone buzzed again. A new number. A voice, robotic. Check your car. He ran outside. His windows were shattered. Spray painted across the hood. Liar. He didn't call the cops. He knew how that would go. Instead, he took a photo and posted it on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, with one caption: "You can break my windows. You can erase my files, but you will never erase the truth. More is coming." And it was. Because Sierra wasn't the only one with secrets. There was someone else, a name he never expected to hear. Someone inside Rob's legal team, ready to come forward. But what they had would blow the entire cover-up wide open. What if the cleanup wasn't just about one incident, but a trail of bribes, papered lies, and silence bought by the pound? Lucas thought he had seen the worst of it. The diary, the surveillance footage, the bruises, the threats. But nothing could have prepared him for what was waiting in that gray envelope. It arrived unmarked. No return address. Hand-delivered to his art studio by a courier who refused to say who sent it. No signature. No message. Just the documents. And what they revealed would not only link Rob Reiner to the 2009 incident, it would connect him to years of cover-ups. Lucas opened the envelope slowly, cautiously, expecting perhaps another veiled threat, a cease and desist letter, maybe a fake psychiatric evaluation planted to discredit him. But no, these were payoff records. Bank transfers, wire receipts, shell company invoices, legal settlement drafts, dozens of pages, some redacted, most not, all of them bearing the faint stamp of RSH Holdings, a private LLC Rob had quietly opened back in 2007, an entity that, until now, had been listed in connection with production-related expenses and private security reimbursements. But here it was again, RSH Holdings, transferring money to Avalon Sunset Hotel Management, Silver Pine Legal Mediation Group, Lindsay C. Walker, independent consultant, Cambridge Youth Wellness Foundation, a known shell front, John Enright, ESQ, all dated within 72 hours of the 2009 Avalon incident. One transfer stood out in particular, $225,000, sent to L.C. Walker, listed only as settlement reimbursement. Memo line, resolve incident November 9th, indemnify all parties. Lucas's breath caught in his throat. November 9th, November 2009, the month before the night Sierra said it happened. Was this payment for another incident? Or was it part of the prep? Either way, this wasn't hush money sent in the heat of panic. It was pre-planned, and that changed everything. He spread the pages across his floor. Red ink circled dates, yellow highlighter over transfer IDs. The further he dug, the worse it got. There were notes in the margins, scribbled by hand, possibly by a paralegal or assistant. Use shell route, avoid press leak. Tell Rob, girl's visa issue verified. Leverage if necessary. Delete original footage once archive backed up. They weren't just silencing a scandal. They were engineering it. Lucas called the number that had come with the courier. A woman answered, nervous, whispering, "Don't say my name. I'm using a burner. I can't stay on long." He asked, "Were you part of Rob's legal team?" A pause. Then, not officially. I worked under his counsel. I handled cleanup. I kept records. He didn't know I kept copies. Lucas leaned against the wall, gripping his phone tight. Why now? Another pause. Because Romy died. And I promised myself if it ever came to that, I'd blow the lid off this whole thing. Lucas asked if she had more. She laughed bitterly. You have no idea. This wasn't the only girl, Lucas. There were 3 others. Different stories. Same ending. Settlements. Sealed. Hidden. Were any of them underage? He asked quietly. Silence. Then, one of them was 15. Lucas almost dropped the phone. Jesus Christ. The woman's voice broke. I thought I was helping the family. I told myself it was for their privacy, their safety. But I see it now. I was part of the machine. A machine that turned victims into liabilities. He asked her, "Can I use this? Can I release it?" "Yes. But do it fast. I'm getting pressure already. Emails. Warnings. My building's been buzzed by unmarked cars twice today. Are you safe?" "No. But that doesn't matter anymore. Just make it mean something." She hung up. Lucas stared at the pages again. Dozens of them. Money trails. Guilt trails. He snapped photos of every document, encrypted them, sent copies to multiple journalists, lawyers, and even Detective Forrester, who called him an hour later sounding out of breath. "Lucas, where did you get these?" A whistleblower. She worked under Rob's counsel. These documents alone could destroy 5 careers. Maybe more. They already destroyed 5 lives. Lucas snapped. That's the part no one wants to talk about. The news cycle detonated. Overnight, the documents were leaked in full to an independent media outlet that didn't rely on studio advertisers or legacy industry protections. The headlines hit like shockwaves. Confidential payoff files link Rob Reiner to multiple silenced abuse settlements. $1.20 million in total payments to victims. Cover-up spans 2008 to 2015. FBI confirms reviewing new materials connected to Reiner family murder case. CNN hesitated. Fox jumped in with venom. MSNBC called for restraint and due process. But the independent networks? They ate it up. Clips of the footage now ran side by side with screenshots of the documents. Memes exploded. Commentators demanded investigations. Victim advocacy groups began issuing statements. Some called for charges against Rob's former legal representatives. Others called for the reopening of all sealed settlements involving minors in Hollywood during the 2000s. It wasn't just a scandal anymore. It was a reckoning. And Lucas? He was the man in the eye of the storm. But then, the retaliation came. Someone filed a court order to freeze his accounts. Claimed he was illegally in possession of privileged corporate property. His landlord received a buyout offer for the entire building. 2 of his gallery shows were suddenly canceled due to safety concerns. And worst of all, his email was hacked. Photos of his studio, his family, his texts, all leaked. Some taken out of context. Some doctored. It didn't matter. The goal wasn't truth, it was destruction. Smear him. Scare him. Break him. Lucas sat on his floor again. Same spot as the night he got Romy's diary. Only this time, everything felt heavier. His phone buzzed. Another unknown number. A text. Enough. No punctuation. Just that word. One word. And somehow, it felt like a threat. He called Forrester. "They're still coming. Heard her now. That means they're scared," she said. "Of what? Of what's coming next?" Lucas took a breath. Because there was something coming next. Something even bigger than the money. Something buried not in emails or video clips, but in a personal confession no one was ever meant to hear. A recording. Hidden. Long forgotten. Until now. What if the one man holding all the secrets confessed everything, but only when it was too late to take it back? Lucas hadn't planned on going back to Brentwood. Not after everything. The threats. The break-in. The viral footage. The legal harassment. But something pulled him there. Call it instinct. Call it guilt. Call it unfinished business. He needed to see the place where it all began and ended. The Reiner estate was still cordoned off, but with Nick behind bars and Rob and Michelle buried, the home had quietly shifted into probate. Lucas still had a key. The gates creaked open like the jaws of some silent beast. And as he stepped through the entryway, past the shattered aura of wealth and legacy, he felt it. That electric hum of memory. The last time he'd stood in that house, Rob had been alive. Michelle had been pretending everything was fine. Nick had been pacing the hall like a wolf without a leash. And Romy? She had just looked tired. Now the house was silent. Dead. But it wasn't empty. Lucas made his way down the hallway to Rob's private study. It was still untouched, dense, masculine, lined with oak bookshelves and the faint scent of cigars Rob never smoked, but always kept around for character. The desk was locked, but Lucas knew the code. 1-9-8-6. The year Stand By Me was released. Inside, papers, memos, old scripts. But nothing earth-shattering. He scanned the room again, eyes catching on the antique film projector in the corner. One Rob had used more for show than screening. Behind it, a small shelf, half covered by a black velvet curtain. Lucas pulled it aside. An old wooden box sat there. Dusty. Plain. Inside, cassette tapes. Dozens. Each labeled by hand. Some were dated. Some were blank. Some had names. But one tape caught his attention immediately. Dated January 7th, 2020. Labeled in black marker. For When I'm Gone. His hands trembled. He found a dusty handheld player in the cabinet below and inserted the tape. He pressed play. What followed was not rehearsed. It was not polished. It wasn't a PR statement. It was Rob, stripped of spin, raw, tired, and scared. If you're listening to this, I'm either dead or too far gone to fix anything. This isn't for the public. This isn't for my family. This is for my conscience. Lucas froze. Rob's voice sounded older, weaker, different from the booming charisma everyone knew. This was a man unraveling. I spent my life telling stories, framing narratives, directing how people saw the world. But I never knew how to rewrite the one inside my own home. Nick was born into shadows. Not his fault, not entirely, but I let those shadows grow. There were signs. So many signs. I ignored them. I explained them away. I protected him, at the expense of everything else. Silence. A long pause. You could hear Rob exhale, maybe even choke back a tear. Then, there was a girl. 2009. That was the moment I should have stopped everything. She was bleeding, scared, and I erased her. Lucas's blood turned to ice. This was it. Confirmation. From Rob's own mouth. No more theories. No more speculation. Just truth. I paid them off. I paid the hotel. The cops. I threatened the girl. I made it disappear. I told myself it was love. Fatherhood. But it was fear. Fear of losing everything. The image. The career. The name. I told Michelle it was a one-time thing. She believed me. Or maybe she didn't. Maybe we both chose denial. Romy. God. Romy knew. She was the only one brave enough to say it out loud. Another long pause. She said, "If you keep protecting Nick, you're going to get someone killed." She was right. And now, if you're hearing this, that prophecy has come true.